The first time that Shigeru Miyamoto applied to work at Nintendo, he was rejected. It wasn't necessarily that he wasn't suitable for a job at the company, he was simply too late. His degree in industrial design would have suited the company perfectly a few years ago, when Nintendo was desperate for toy makers to create innovative new products. Now though, Nintendo had set their sights on the video game market, and this meant that the company needed people who understood complex electronic systems and machines. Someone with Miyamoto's skill set as an artist was significantly less useful. The then president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, is quoted as having said of Miyamoto, "We need engineers, not painters." Ultimately, Miyamoto was hired by Nintendo not due to his talent, skill, experience, or qualifications, but because his father knew a guy. This is a story of toy makers, corporate greed, company politics, and organised crime. It's the story of an underachieving banjo player who was saved from obscurity by a family connection. This is the story of why Miyamoto wanted to work at Nintendo, why they didn't want him, and why he ultimately got the job anyway. At the time when Miyamoto was pursuing a job in video games, there was no educational pathway into gaming. Things are a lot different now, and if you're looking for a career in games development, this video's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, can help. Southern New Hampshire University offers degrees in game development that can help you on your path to creating the next Donkey Kong, or at least help with getting your foot in the door. SNHU's degree in game programming is perfect for anyone looking to break into the games industry and develop crucial skills that will serve them well in an increasingly competitive job market. SNHU's degree in game programming is perfect for anyone looking to break into the games industry and develop crucial skills that will serve them well in an increasingly competitive job market. SNHU has been voted amongst the most innovative universities by the US News & World Report. SNHU's tuition rates are among the lowest in the United States, and you may qualify for additional financial aid or be able to convert existing college credits to help fast-track your degree completion. If, like a young Shigeru Miyamoto, you're unsure of what to do with your life, or you find yourself stuck in a dead-end job and desperate to change careers to something more creatively fulfilling, we highly recommend you check out Southern New Hampshire University's Bachelor's in Game Programming and Development. Visit snhu.edu/video game storytime to learn more and start a game development journey that could change your life. To tell the story of how Miyamoto ended up working at Nintendo, we first need to tell the story of the company itself and why it was a desirable place for a young man to want to work. The short answer is that it was convenient. Miyamoto grew up in Kyoto, first in the countryside and later in the suburbs, and Nintendo was a major employer in the area. The long answer was that Nintendo just seemed like a very fun place, and Miyamoto was far more concerned with having fun than working in a more serious job. Miyamoto could be forgiven for assuming that he might have a place at Nintendo. The company's business strategy had changed multiple times in a few short decades, as Yamauchi sought out new ventures and a new direction in a rapidly evolving world. Yamauchi was born into Nintendo royalty, but his ascension to the throne had come a lot sooner than anticipated. He was still a student when his grandfather passed away, leaving him to inherit a sizable corporate empire. As the new company owner, Yamauchi had been ruthless in cutting all ties to Nintendo's historical corporate legacy and former leadership strategy. One condition of him taking over as president was that his cousin, the only other member of the family in a leadership role at Nintendo, be let go. Shortly after becoming president, Yamauchi fired all senior managers, giving his new Nintendo a fresh start. In doing so, he signalled his plan to move the company away from its heritage and into new markets. Legacy, though, would prove to be vital to Nintendo's success. Yamauchi floundered with some new business ventures, before realising that he needed to keep the company focused on its original goal: entertainment through play. Long before Hiroshi Yamauchi took his throne, Nintendo's early success had come in no small part thanks to organised crime. Originally founded to produce exquisitely detailed handmade Hanafuda playing cards, the company's goods were intended for use around the home and sold reasonably well in the local area of Kyoto, but were hardly in demand across the rest of the country. Nintendo would likely never have become a household name had the Japanese Yakuza not taken a liking to Hanafuda for underground gambling purposes. The crime syndicate required a huge quantity of cards for their games, as each game required a new, fresh deck of cards. So, with a tremendous boost in demand, Nintendo moved from traditional hand manufacturing practices to automated assembly. This had the effect of turning a reasonably profitable local business into one of the biggest names in Japanese entertainment. This was the state of play at the time of Yamauchi's ascension to the company's top position, and it was his intention to expand Nintendo's reach even further. An early partnership with the Walt Disney Company led to a profitable set of Mickey Mouse-themed Western playing cards, but it was clear that the card market could only reach so far. Yamauchi had a habit of shooting from the hip, making business decisions based on what felt right, rather than any concrete logic or research. Thus it was that Nintendo got into the instant rice and noodle business. Alas, this was far from a success. Another early attempt to change Nintendo's direction involved investments in Japan's infamous love hotels, which rent rooms by the hour for couples looking for a discreet rendezvous. It's claimed that Yamauchi had a personal interest in these establishments, even though, for the most part, his wife tended to overlook his indiscretions. Regardless, the love hotels were not the bold new direction for Nintendo that Yamauchi was seeking. Nor were the taxicabs that, while reasonably popular, came with a lot of hassle surrounding employee rights that Yamauchi didn't have the patience for. These failed ventures came at a cost, and Yamauchi had to float Nintendo on the Japanese stock exchange to fund his experiments. He needed to find a direction that would work, or else his empire would come crumbling down around him. The solution, it turned out, was to return Nintendo back to basics. As a manufacturer of playing cards, the company had, historically, always been about selling fun. What new avenues of play could Nintendo explore? Enter Gunpei Yokoi, an electrical engineer who wound up working for Nintendo primarily because nobody else would hire him. At this point, Nintendo had no real need for electronics, so Yokoi was tasked with maintaining the automated machines that printed the company's playing cards. This was not a particularly time-consuming job, and with little else to do, Yokoi ended up messing around with some of the factory's equipment, such as the lathe, where, to entertain himself, he created an extendable arm that could grab a ball. When Yamauchi saw Yokoi's creation, he was intrigued. Yokoi had only been with the company for a few months at this point, and he was worried he was about to be reprimanded. Instead, Yamauchi said, "Nintendo is a game maker, so turn that thing into a game and sell it." Yamauchi had, in fact, been pondering the toy market for a while. With his expertise in engineering and his clear love of invention, Yokoi was the perfect fit to head up Nintendo's very first research and development division, later named Nintendo R&D 1. His goal was to make toys, and it was a job that he was very well suited to. The extendable arm toy became the Ultra Hand, and sold well in its first year. From this point onwards, Yokoi would come to Yamauchi with fun new ideas for products that could be sold as toys: a laser gun, a periscope, and the Love Tester, Nintendo's first electronic machine, which claimed to measure the feelings of romance between two people holding hands, but which in practice simply gave young Japanese couples an excuse to touch each other when this was otherwise taboo. Said Yokoi of this invention, "I'd majored in electrical engineering. If I didn't do something electronic, I'd look bad, but then anything too complicated was out of the question. I was just playing around with the resistance measurements on a multimeter when I noticed there was some electrical current running through the human body. The Love Tester came from me wondering if I could somehow use this to get girls to hold my hand." While some inventions made a bigger impact on the market than others, Nintendo's expansion into the toy market was a tremendous success. Indeed, the need for new toys was so great that the company began advertising for new toy makers, which is how Yokoi interviewed and ultimately hired Genyo Takeda, who would later create Nintendo's earliest arcade games, EVR Race and Sheriff, giving him the distinction of being Nintendo's very first game designer. It turned out that in a post-war Japan where toys had been scarce for an entire generation, there were a lot of talented creators who'd learned how to make their own fun. Throughout the 60s, Japan's economy boomed as the country transformed itself into an economic powerhouse, filled with affluent parents who wanted to provide luxuries for their own children that they had been denied when they were young. Alas, in the 70s, an inevitable economic recession came, and with it, some of Nintendo's ventures began to lose momentum. Yamauchi set his company's sights on the next logical market, arcades. While Nintendo had been expanding into the arcade scene over the past few years, inspired initially by the company's success with Yokoi's light gun invention, a new game had made the market even more appealing. There were advantages to nickel and diming consumers at a time when larger expenses felt extravagant. Because of the low cost of playing a game, arcades were seeing profits even as the nation tightened its belt, and with this came an increased demand for novel attractions. Rather than selling a pricey toy to more affluent Japanese families, Nintendo could sell game cabinets, not just in Japan, but in the lucrative US market. Thus, Nintendo of America was formed, with the specific goal of cutting off a slice of the arcade pie. Such was the environment, and such were Nintendo's priorities, when Miyamoto applied to work at the company. Miyamoto hadn't given much thought to arcade games. After much soul-searching, he had decided that his passion was in toy making. He was drawn to Nintendo because of its recent history of producing innovative products for children, without realizing that the company was now focusing its attentions on more technologically advanced devices. Miyamoto's application was not exactly strong at this point. Even if Nintendo had been looking for industrial design graduates, his academic record was less than exemplary. It had taken him 5 years to complete his university studies because he had a terrible habit of failing to show up for class. Instead, he had developed a passion for Western music, teaching himself guitar and playing in a bluegrass band in coffee houses. He would use his copious, often stolen free time away from his studies to travel to Tokyo and browse record shops for American rarities that were extremely difficult to get hold of throughout most of Japan. He wasn't particularly sure while studying what he wanted to do with his life. Industrial design was a logical, catch-all subject of study for someone who didn't know what he wanted, but knew that he couldn't bear the thought of corporate office work. Miyamoto decided that he'd like to try and turn his passion for making things into a career. The biggest local toy company was Nintendo, so he decided to try his luck. He said, "I wanted to create things that would surprise people, so I thought that I had wanted to make toys, and so I applied to Nintendo wanting to be a designer, but what I was told is that they weren't hiring any designers at the time." Fortunately, a friend of my father's knew the president of Nintendo, Mr. Hiroshi Yamauchi, so my dad's friend said, "I'll at least try to get you an interview." The Miyamoto family's friend must have been a strong connection, because the would-be toy maker soon found himself in an interview face-to-face with Yamauchi himself. The two could not have looked more different. Yamauchi was, by this point, past middle age. His appearance was immaculate. He wore his hair slicked back, his nails were carefully manicured, and his large yellow-tinted glasses hid his cold, reserved eyes that rarely displayed his true emotion. In contrast, Miyamoto wore his hair long and shaggy, and his smiling, boyish charm reflected his enthusiasm for play. Miyamoto, though, had plenty of ideas, and he was tremendously excited to share them. Yamauchi invited him for a subsequent meeting to talk through his ideas for new toys, to which Miyamoto brought his portfolio, as well as a large sack. Inside the sack was Miyamoto's masterpiece, a recent invention that he hoped would pique Yamauchi's interest. It was a series of wooden coat hangers intended for children. One was shaped like an elephant, another like a chicken. After showing this off, Miyamoto went through his portfolio, which was filled with sketches and designs for additional toys, such as a clock and a garden seesaw swing set. Yamauchi couldn't help but be won over by this young would-be artist. He saw a lot of potential here, exactly the sort of potential that Nintendo could monetize. With the possible exception of his failed love hotel venture, Yamauchi rarely had much actual interest in his company's wares. He famously never played video games, and didn't really understand a thing about how they were made or what made one work. What Yamauchi did understand was people. Much of his business decisions, which he made on gut instinct, came from knowing which person to trust with a key job. While Gunpei Yokoi's Ultra Hand prototype had caught his eye, he'd given Yokoi more room to experiment primarily because he recognised that his employee had talents that were not being utilised. Later, he would rescue a company named HAL Laboratory from bankruptcy on the condition that one of the company's employees, Satoru Iwata, was promoted to president. Iwata would ultimately succeed Yamauchi as president of Nintendo. It was not easy to win Yamauchi's approval. At a time when most Japanese businesses inspired loyalty in their employees through mutual respect, Yamauchi had a habit of pitting his departments against one another in competition to win his favour. Earning Yamauchi's approval was the goal that drove the business forward, and in these early meetings, despite not having the skill set that an emerging tech company needed, Miyamoto had pleased Nintendo's president. Not that Miyamoto realised at the time just how much Yamauchi had thought of his presentation. He said, "One of the things I had brought and shown to Mr. Yamauchi, I found out later he had submitted a patent on it without me realising it. It's funny, isn't it? I found that out about 3 years after I joined the company. The head of our general affairs and our IP team in Japan knew me from the moment I joined the company, and I had always wondered, how did he know who I was even though I had just joined the company?" Yamauchi hired Miyamoto as an artist, even though the company didn't really have an immediate need of his artistic talents. It was a matter of getting him on staff now, with the expectation that a good role could be found for him later. Later in life, Miyamoto would reflect on just how lucky he was to be able to stroll into a company on the rise and walk away with a job, despite his less than impressive academic record. He said, "Especially recently, Nintendo has become one of those companies that graduates from colleges and good universities really want to work for. Because of that, the competition's really become so fierce for positions. And that means that a lot of the recent recruits for Nintendo have tended to have the higher degree from the prestigious colleges and universities and whatnot. I often say to then Nintendo president Satoru Iwata, if I was applying for a job here today, I, with my actual college degree, would probably not have been employed by Nintendo. That's seriously what we talk about. That's why I occasionally do the interviews with university students myself, and sometimes I do a very unusual thing. We have several steps to our recruiting tests, and sometimes, even if someone fails to pass one of the steps, I might pick up on them and try to find out something really different within them that you can't judge just by a college degree. That's one of the special little jobs I set myself. The moral of the story is that you can never tell what someone is capable of. Miyamoto was quickly dismissed by Yamauchi as having a skill set that simply didn't fit Nintendo's current needs. A few years later, the boy that was hired mostly as a favour to his father ended up becoming Nintendo's star employee. Don't be too quick to judge other people as unhelpful or unimportant. Sometimes a person's greatest skills aren't easy to spot at first glance. That includes yourself. You have no idea what you're capable of until you put your best foot forward and try something new.